And we are going to be recording. So thank you very much. We're going to go through, this is a hybrid event. So I'm going to implore for patience and generosity if we have any kind of technical snafus. We like to do the hybrid event because the in-person piece really allows for a networking that's not always so readily at hand when you're just virtual, but we also want everyone in our network to have access to this event. So that's why it's important to still have it virtually, and also the benefit of holding it on Zoom is that we can record it. These events are recorded and then posted on YouTube and uploaded to our website, so everyone can access it in the future. But in that regard, let's go over a few housekeeping rules. We encourage you to enable your video camera, but it's optional, obviously. And then if you could please stay on mute, unless you are called on to ask a question. Please submit all questions and commentary using the chat function. We might not get to it directly, but we will have breaks periodically, and we will ask your questions and get them answered at the end of people's, either their panel discussion or their keynote address. Again, like I said earlier, this meeting will be recorded. And we do have closed captions available on Zoom for participants if they need that option as well. For those of us in person, please help yourself to food. We're not going to be taking a break. If you need to use the restroom, it's in the lobby. This is a formal, informal event. Please come and go as you need. And there's free parking structure that's located right here outside of the Wind Center. So I hope everybody parks there. They said they would not be ticketing during the event. And happy Friday, everyone. Oh, and now it's my pleasure to introduce Alina Anberg, the Director of Employer Partnerships and Business and Technology sectors. It's been my pleasure to help put this together for her and the North region.
Good morning. My name is Alina Anberg. As mentioned, Regional Director for the North Regional Consortium in Business and Technology. And I have the 8 campuses in the greater Sacramento area and South Lake Tahoe. I wanted to welcome you here this morning. Thank you for your time and attention. And those of us on Zoom, thank you so much. This is an important topic. And people in ICC are kind of like, what? Broadband? What? Because we're used to talking about computer science, AI, cybersecurity, and all those things, and me too. But we don't have that without the infrastructure. And so I wanted to play just an audio clip for us quickly to kind of make it make sense and bring those items together for us.
I went to meet her because she was driving, like 15 miles between homes. The second stop was in the home park. And that's where this one student named Avila lived. And he's there with like 2 other kids in the neighborhood. 14. Okay, and how old are you? There are swaths of areas outside of our local where the kids live and they get like bused into school, and those are the places where they just need to have an internet connection.
It's like it is like every other house we get internet sometimes. AT&T, he said there was no service. She decided to help the youth and give us a hotspot.
Are you going to leave me a key in case something?
It provides hotspot. So we're doing hotspot is like a device where you can access the assignments and that stuff. It's been really hard, to be honest. I take college courses, and I'm checking both and concentrating for assignments.
So when the school said we're going to use the online, and you didn't know
how am I going to handle it?
So that was I get emotional about it because I know the family. A clip from 2020, so a lot of us were responsive, and it was the height of the crisis. We were able to solve that by having a local provider be willing to invest in a point-to-point system, but that is still true for that location to this day. And so I wanted to bring us back to why we're all here, and that is for the access for these barriers to education, telehealth, employment, development, and all those things for these communities and rural communities where I'm from, and I have my part in this. The flip side of that is all the amazing things that that student went on, he was a dual enrollment student with the community college. He went on now to be at Sac State, wants to be a lawyer and works in a law firm part-time around his school schedule. So there are amazing things that happen, and we have such an opportunity here. So I just want to kind of bring back into focus why we're all really here. The college students and bringing opportunities to these communities, even communities with connectivity have these challenges. So thank you. And I'll bring it back to Hillary for our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I didn't get to say in the opening that those of you that don't know, Valley Vision is a civic leadership organization. And 21st Century Workforce is our organization, one of our organization's multiple impact areas. And we serve as a regional organizer to facilitate employer, industry, and community collaboration. What we hope to do is connect and align. Those are two of our main goals with these advisories, connecting and aligning the industry with the career technical education program developers so that our labor needs are met. And on that, with that, I'm going to go over the agenda. At 10 a.m., we're going to have a welcome and introduction. That's what you're experiencing right now. At 10:10, we'll have our keynote address on broadband infrastructure investments. And then at 10:25, we'll go over labor market and trend analysis data with Ebony Benzing from the Center of Excellence. And then afterward, we have a panel discussion from industry experts. And then at 11:45, we'll have a community college program highlights, and then close. And as I said, at the end of each of these segments, there'll be a brief Q&A opportunity for those of you online and in the room. And now, we're going to thank all of our sponsors. Without our sponsors, this would not be possible. So Los Rios Community College, California Community Colleges, COE, Lake Tahoe, Golden Sierra, YCCD, NCCC, Sierra College, North Far North, SETA, and Yolo County Workforce Investment Boards. Those are some of our sponsors for this event today. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Karen Eckersley. Perfect, there she is. California Eckersley she's from the California Public Utilities Commission, and she will be giving our keynote address on broadband infrastructure and investments, overview and opportunities. Karen Eckersley is a communications engineer by training and has a technology construction, software integration, and consulting background. The caseworker section is working to help tribal nations, public agencies, and new ISPs understand and apply grants to improve internet service in a rich and complicated funding environment. She lives in Humboldt County and supervises one of the CPUC broadband caseworker sections. Thank you so much, Karen, for joining us, and I'm going to pass on the hosting duties to you.
Thank you, Hillary, and hello, everyone who's there and virtually as well. Thank you also to Valley Vision for the invitation to speak with you all today on broadband funding. I'm planning to talk about the broadband programs that the CPUC is funding, the role of state agencies in that funding, and the statewide middle mile network. Along the way, I will define some of the terms that you are hearing today, the middle mile and the last mile, and I'll also talk about where the CPUC is in the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. It's called BEAD, and why workforce development is critical to the success of these infrastructure projects. Let me share my screen. Okay. These are the infrastructure, These are the infrastructure programs which the CPUC is operating at the moment. BEAD is front and center right now. I'll speak about that more in a moment. The California Advanced Services Fund is the CPUC's long-term program. It's a suite of programs for infrastructure and adoption. CPUC has a new program called Loan Loss Reserve, This provides credit enhancement to local agencies to build broadband infrastructure. And finally, we have a last mile federal funding account. This is a $2 billion account which uses a combination of federal and state funds to provide grants for communications infrastructure. Each of these programs has different rules, different eligibility criteria, different maps which support them. As your questions come up later, I'll try and distinguish which one that I am talking about. So here is an overview of the main state agencies which work in broadband and their focus. You're probably very aware of GoBiz, which is the overarching economic development arm for California. The CPUC, my agency, is listed here, which handles last mile programs and a lot of the mapping programs. The California Department of Technology, CDT, manages the statewide open access middle mile. More on that in a moment. Caltrans is the build partner for the statewide middle mile. You'll be hearing about more from Caltrans in the roundtable sessions. And finally, the Departments of Education and the State Library are also champions of infrastructure and equitable connectivity. So this slide is an overview of the connections between major parts of broadband infrastructure. You see on the left, long-haul networks, high-capacity fiber optic connections between internet exchange points, major cities and hubs. Middle mile are the connections to the last mile service providers. Middle mile provides access to the larger internet and its data centers. Last mile is the infrastructure which connects the connectivity directly to homes and small businesses. It's the infrastructure you see on the street that makes that final connection. Last mile can be fiber optics, coax cable, wireless, or some combination of these. Your panel later today is going to talk more about these big picture components. In the meanwhile, let's talk about the statewide open access middle mile. This is the major infrastructure undertaking that is bringing connectivity to last mile service providers, anchor institutions, and businesses all over the state. On the right, you can see the proposed routes. This is where the last mile service providers will be able to interconnect and get to the larger internet and data centers. On the left-hand side, you can see the number of planned miles for 7 counties in Northern California that I think is the focus of where you're talking about today. This information is from the CDT Middle Mile public site. There's a link here on the chart so that you can explore this project. The chart also shows the different types of build, lease, joint build, and construction in these counties, and the number of miles. The last mile federal funding account applications in each of these same counties. This is for the CPUC's federal funding account. The agency, I'm sorry, we will not be funding all of these requests, but this allows you to see some of the specific proposed amounts for projects in these counties. This is real work that's going to be done. So combined with the middle mile on the previous slide, there's going to be a lot of communications infrastructure work in these counties. Very, very exciting. The CPUC focus is now on the BEAD program, which is funding from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA. You can see the goals of the program here. California has submitted 2 volumes which propose how to implement the NTIA's rules. The NTIA has proposed volume has approved volume 1 of California's initial BEAD proposal, which covers the challenge process. These proposed rules in volume 1 is right now awaiting commission approval. The commission plans to vote on this right now on May 9th. The second volume is not yet approved by NTIA, but the NTIA has required elements for this program, and that's what we're talking about today, which is workforce development. Their also required elements are responsiveness to federal fair wages for projects which are building the infrastructure. The timeline for BEAD shows that the CPUC's next step is the challenge process. The challenge is the process whereby eligible entities provide information about the level of service at proposed locations. The CPUC will publish a map with unserved and underserved locations, and entities can challenge that determination with their data. It's all very complicated. We're holding a webinar on the challenge process next week, and you can see the link to be able to get that here. Okay, so the CPUC has proposed to NTIA that its approach to workforce development for BEAD will be providing research and facilitating outreach. The goal is to talk to local entities, tribes, and community organizations about what their specific workforce looks like and what they need. And these conversations will help us better understand how to provide the support needed. There's a lot of research that's offered in volume 2 of the BEAD initial proposal, and it shows the research in different community organizations that the CPUC is currently seeking input from, and what the job sectors that will be impacted by the BEAD funding. Additionally, NTIA has developed a workforce planning guide for entities like the CPUC, which offers direction as the entity responds to the requirements. So some of those components are shown in the graphic on the left-hand side of this slide, and the guide itself is linked at the bottom. So part of the research from this is knowing how much California already spends in workforce development, which is a huge number, but please note that this is a combination of public and private initiatives. Here we're looking at the trainings, programs, and initiatives that are needed to develop a strong California workforce. It's time to get specific with what some of those jobs are that are required to deploy broadband throughout the state and the qualifications needed to get there. So on the left is an analysis of the 12 occupational categories that deploy broadband. It also shows job classifications that are outside just broadband straight deployment. The chart shows the number of people who are currently employed in each category throughout the state. You go over on the left-hand chart, but the right-hand columns, the last two columns show the increased numbers and increased need for a broadband workforce with the BEAD, the capital funding, capital projects funding, and the last mile investments. You can see the number of new workers needed and the increase in the particular category. So this chart gives a perspective on the pool of people that could be drawn upon for this work and which categories might be hardest to supply as a percentage of the existing workforce. On the right-hand side, you see the qualifications needed for these same jobs. It shows the typical education and work experience requirements and the typical amount of on-the-job training required to be proficient. Several of these jobs can be taught on the job training and then fortified with additional trainings and certifications. I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about that from the next speakers. So knowing who will be needed and how best to support that skill set is an important aspect of establishing a skilled workforce. This analysis helps the CPUC understand the basics of this in California so that last mile service providers can create workable plans and apply that information to their funding requests. And with the last mile and the middle mile investments, there's going to be a significant amount of work and good jobs available for broadband deployment. So that was all of my prepared remarks. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to talk with you this morning, and I am happy to take any questions that you have now. Hillary, I can't see my chat. So if you can read if anything is in there for any questions, or I can go back and we can reference any of the slides.
I don't want to speak while Karen's speaking. Karen, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. There were, I believe, Liz, are there some questions in the chat that you can read out to Karen? No. No questions. Okay. Well, if there are questions that materialize after this, Karen will make sure that they get to you and respond. So thank you, Karen. Really appreciate you sharing that information. I liked to see in the chat that someone said how useful that it was. So yeah, thank you so much, Karen. And now we have a presentation, actually a video recording. And since I guess there was some sound issues on Zoom with our first audio piece, can you press pause real quick so it does start? I want to make sure that you guys can hear it. So I'm going to give the intro and then we'll start the video. And if you're having trouble hearing the recording online, please notify us in the chat and we'll adjust the sound. But as I was saying, we have up next Ebony Benzing. It's a recording from Ebony. She is the director of the North Greater Sacramento Center of Excellence. And she's not able to attend today, but we have this recording of her presentation of the labor market data. And she has instructed us that we can select questions from you. We've done this before, where if you have questions, we'll write them down, or we just capture them and then we send them to her, and then we send it all of the questions and her answers to everybody who registered for this event, or who showed up in person and left their email. So I just wanted to assure you that if you have questions about the data that we're sharing that we can't answer because we're not the ones who put the data together, that we will get the response to you from her. So with that, I'm going to have D'Angelo start the video.
Good afternoon. My name is Ebony Benzing, and I am the director for the North Greater Sacramento Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. The mission of the Centers of Excellence is to support the development of career education programs in California community colleges. And we typically do this by providing labor market data and related analyses. The goal of my presentation today is to provide you with an overview of the telecommunications sector in the Greater Sacramento region. To start, we'll take a look at an industry overview of telecommunications and the broader sector that it is part of, which is information. In 2022, there were just over 3,000 jobs in the telecommunications industry, which is part of the information sector in Greater Sacramento. And there were more than 140 businesses participating in the industry. Jobs in this industry are projected to decline over the next 5 years by about 8%. And this decline is fairly representative of what's been happening in both the industry and overall information sector since 2010. This slide compares the employment and the information sector from 2010 to 2022. The pie chart on the left shows the share of jobs by industry sector and the information sector altogether. In 2010, there were more than 15,900 jobs in Greater Sacramento's information sector. Most of these jobs are concentrated in 3 industries, including telecommunications at 47%, publishing at nearly 21%, and broadcasting and content providers at almost 20%. By 2022, the overall number of jobs in this sector had declined to just over 10,800 jobs in information, and the share of employment by industry has shifted drastically. The most significant change was in telecommunications, which went from representing 47% of employment in the information sector to just over a quarter of the sector's jobs by 2022. This chart shows the historic and projected job changes for Greater Sacramento's telecommunications industry. Between 2017 and 2022, jobs in telecommunications decreased by 25%, from just over 4,000 jobs in 2017 to 3,000 jobs in 2022. The industry is projected to continue to lose jobs over the next 5 years, although at a much slower pace of 8%. This slide shows a breakdown of the demographics of Greater Sacramento's telecommunications industry workforce. The telecom workforce is predominantly white, male, and between the ages of 25 and 54 years old. The industry has a slightly higher than average risk of retirement, as 26% of the telecommunications workforce is aged 55 years and older, and the average across all jobs in Greater Sacramento is about 24%. Now, this last slide in the industry section shows the top 10 occupations that hold the most employment in Greater Sacramento's telecommunications industry. This table also provides data on the projected job changes for each occupation within the industry. Across the board, these jobs are projected to decline over the next 5 years. The top 10 occupations are a mix of sales, installation, maintenance, and repair, and computer and networking support positions. The top 3 occupations, which are the first 3 rows in this table, include telecommunications equipment installers and repairers, telecommunications line installers and repairers, which is the primary occupation for fiber optics technicians, and sales representatives of services. Together, these 3 occupations represent about 40% of the jobs in Greater Sacramento's telecommunications industry. Up next, we're going to take a look at occupational demand directly related to specific roles in broadband. As we saw on the last slide, Greater Sacramento's telecommunications industry employs a broad range of workers to fill various roles. To focus this part of the presentation, we're calling in some research from Broadband, which was a 2022 report called Reimagining the Broadband Technology Workforce. This report estimated the potential impact of the 2021 Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and highlighted multiple employment opportunities for big tech workers who had been laid off in the tech field. It also highlighted middle-skill job opportunities, as well as opportunities to increase diversity and inclusivity of the broadband workforce. If you have an opportunity, I highly recommend that you take some time to read the report. It's linked here in the presentation. This report also called out key occupational groups that might be part of the new job growth in the broadband technology sector. This included installation and maintenance roles, as well as construction, machinery, customer service, and cloud support. Some of these roles or occupations were in the top 10 occupation list for Greater Sacramento's telecommunications industry. But for the rest of this presentation, we're going to focus in on the installation and maintenance occupations and telecom. This includes, again, telecommunications equipment installers and repairers, telecommunications line installers and repairers, and radio, cellular, and tower equipment installers and repairers. This table shows the projected job outlook for the 3 broadband installation and maintenance occupations. While most jobs are concentrated in the first line, which is telecommunications equipment installers, at over 1,300 jobs in 2022, jobs within this occupation are projected to grow significantly slower than average at 2%. Jobs for the telecommunications line installers and repairers are projected to grow the fastest of the group at 9%, which is the same as the projected job growth rate for all jobs across Greater Sacramento's region. Overall, there will be an estimated 258 job openings each year for the next 5 years across these occupations. Most of the projected job openings are concentrated in the equipment installers occupation, followed by line installers. For this part of the presentation, we're going to take a look at job postings related to the broadband installation and maintenance occupations. This data represents the 7-county Greater Sacramento region and covers the last 12 months. In general, the COE found 400 relevant job postings related to the 3 broadband installation and repair occupations. The table on the right-hand slide shows the breakdown of job postings by occupation. Most of the job postings were for equipment installers and repairers at 250 job postings, followed by line installers at 116 postings, and lastly, tower equipment installers at 27 postings. Before I get a little bit more into the breakdown of this data, I do want to highlight or spotlight something interesting that I found in the job postings, which is on the bottom of this slide. Jobs for Humanity is an organization focused on connecting historically underrepresented talent to employers, and they're partnering with DISH to connect our local residents to cable installation jobs. I think that this represents a fantastic opportunity and initiative for partnership to support individuals from our communities who've been left behind when it comes to workforce development. And if you're in a role that connects people to jobs, I highly encourage you to follow up on this organization. So getting back into the data, this slide shows the top locations, employers or companies, and job titles related to the 3 broadband installation and repair occupations. When I say top, I mean that these items on the list had the most job postings related to the 3 occupations. One of the most surprising things about these lists is the list in the middle. And it shows that these broadband installation and maintenance jobs aren't just limited to broadband service providers. And it includes employment opportunities from the state of California and infrastructure construction companies such as MasTec. This slide shows the top skills by type, and this is again coming from the job postings. There are 3 types of skills that we're looking at here. We have specialized skills, which are specific and relevant, as they are the key skills needed for employment in these jobs. There's also baseline, or what I sometimes refer to as soft skills. And lastly, software skills. Now, on this slide, this chart and the table summarize the most requested level of education and job experience for postings related to the 3 broadband installation and maintenance repair occupations. Most job postings had either no education requirement listed, which was the 47% here on the left, or required a high school diploma or its equivalent for employment. And most job listings have either no experience listed or required between 0 and 3 years of work experience. For the last part of the presentation, we're going to take a look at the type of education and training needed for someone to gain access to broadband installation and maintenance jobs in the region, as well as the training that's available within our space. Now, this chart summarizes the entry-level education and experience requirements typically needed for an individual to access an entry-level job in one of these 3 occupations. We're providing information on both the entry-level education that's needed, the work experience that an individual might be expected to have when they're first accessing that entry-level job, as well as the on-the-job training that's required. And these terms refer to how much time is required for on-the-job training. One thing that I would like to highlight is that if you compare this list to what you see in the job postings, it looks like there might be a little bit of a mismatch, especially among the entry-level education requirements. One thing to be aware of is that in the job postings, vocational education certificates tend to be lumped together with the high school or GED education requirement. So while it may not be specifically called out in those job postings, gathering more information from local employers or kind of doing a closer read of individual job postings will help us figure out what's specifically needed there. Now, these lists of programs show the courses or the programs that are offered through our local community colleges. And these are courses that are related to broadband installation units. Now, specifically for telecommunications, we were able to identify 3 programs at local colleges. And this includes the certificate in fiber optics technician and the certificate in the telecommunications specialist at American College. And it also includes a certificate and associate degree in telecommunications technology at Sacramento City Colleges. The colleges or local community colleges also offer programs and topics that are adjacent or next to or closely related to this particular area. And these topics include electronics, computer infrastructure and support, and computer networking. I'm going to call out here that the computer programs are particularly relevant because they are part of the cloud computing roles. They will help connect people to cloud computing jobs. Now, the last thing I want to highlight on this slide is you may notice that there is a distinct absence of other post-secondary training providers in these lists. We were not able to identify telecommunication training programs from other post-secondary training providers. These programs might exist, but they might differ from the traditional credit model, which is what's shown up here. For the last or second to last slide in this presentation, this table or chart compares the annual job openings for each occupation to the average number of awards for each occupation, or for programs related to these occupations. In the last 3 years, local community colleges conferred an average of 5 awards through their telecommunications programs, while there are an estimated 250 annual job openings across the 3 occupations. As you can see, demand is most certainly outpacing supply, and there seems to be a noticeable gap in meeting local workforce demand in this particular arena. To close out the presentation, I thought I'd highlight some key takeaways for you. Overall, the number of jobs in Greater Sacramento's telecom industry has significantly declined since 2010, and it's projected to continue to decline through 2027. However, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act represents an opportunity to at least stabilize what's happening in our local telecom industry, and it also represents an opportunity to re-engage with local local residents who've historically been left out of workforce development. If you're curious to know who those ladies are from different data work I've done over the last 6 months, you've been able to pinpoint that these are typically communities of color and in particular, Black men. Lastly, there is a gap between supply and demand. In general, this suggests a need to increase efforts to connect people to these jobs, and offering additional training options may be part of that strategy. So that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. If you happen to have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via email. Thank you.
Thank you. We're always grateful for Ebony and her data. I just wanted to say something now. I saw the order that we presented it. I had the person from the CPUC share the investment that's going on and all the jobs related to that. It kind of seems contradictory, but a reminder that Ebony can pull from current job descriptions and the history, and that Karen is speaking to the investment that's coming. So just want to make that. Little out of order.
Thank you, Alina. Appreciate that. Yeah, so if there are any questions for Ebony on her presentation, we can collect those for you now. Is there anyone in the room? Here, we've got no on the chat. Okay, so if I could have Trish Kelly come join us, and our panelists that are here come join us up at this panel table up here. Angela, do you think you could turn the mics on over here? We'll have to do a mic check also, just to make sure all of the sound is working.
Test.
There we got one.
Test. Testing one.
So for those of you online and in the room, it's my pleasure to introduce Trish Kelly. She's Managing Director at Valley Vision. She oversees Valley Vision Food and Ag and Economy. She started the 21st Century Workforce Program that we all work at now, but in particular, she is also the Managing Director of our Broadband Strategies Impact Area. So without further ado, Trish.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all the Valley Vision staff that have worked so hard to put this together. And thanks to all of you for being here and online virtually. I haven't done the workforce advisory meetings for a while, but I did them for several years, and I'm really excited to be back. Talking to the employers as well. And as Alina mentioned, I was just not worrying. Ernesto is up there. You can see him just in the corner. There's our other panel. That's my first hybrid advisory. I wanted to just give you a quick background on the work that we're doing as manager of the Connected Capital Area Broadband Consortium. That is a consortium that is funded by the PUC, and that's one reason that we asked Karen to be here today, to give you an overview of this landscape of funding that's coming. We have managed the consortium since 2012. We're part of a statewide network that is funded by the PUC through the California Advanced Services Fund. So many years ago, the state recognized in the legislation that we had big gaps across our regions. And then, of course, with the pandemic, everything really was highlighted, not just in our rural and connected or just areas, but in our urban communities, especially some of the underserved areas that we saw when kids couldn't get online for school, access to healthcare, jobs, et cetera, and all the disruptions of the pandemic. So we work very closely with our congressional representatives in the legislature, as well as all the state agencies that Karen described. And that's one reason that we wanted to really undertake this discussion, because we know in these statewide discussions and working locally with our providers, our internet service providers, and our jurisdictions, that this is a huge critical issue. And working also with the industry association. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today. I'm eager to hear what you have to say. And as Alina mentioned, the data is historical. And what happens is
we know that there's now a huge infusion of investment coming in. It is historic and it's transformative. And we need to be ready. We want to make sure that our local communities have the chance to get the workers that need the opportunity. Valley Vision is also working through another state investment called California Jobs First on our regional economic strategy. This is another investment into inclusive economic development and helping us be ready for climate transition. So broadband for us is a critical enabling technology to deal with a more sustainable environment. So with that, I'm going to say a few more other little things. Valley Vision has also worked with the state to prepare a guidebook to help facilitate permit streamlining so that the providers can get the projects in the ground. This is going to be a big lift for local jurisdictions to handle that part of the process too, to enable the projects to come on board. So there's a lot of moving pieces that you can see. And what Karen described on the federal funding account, those projects, applications are being reviewed right now by the PUC, and we expect to have some decisions shortly. That is going to be a huge infusion. It's over $100 million that's going to come in this region, not including Placer and El Dorado County. So it's just a huge shift in our landscape. And I do expect that the job projections and those supply gaps are going to differ. And what Ebony described, I think, is a more narrow set of occupations too, because I think when you talk about the construction industry overall, the trenching and the other kind of things that go on with that, there's going to be more of that adjacent skills. So we're really excited to have this discussion. I'm thrilled to welcome our panel with Adam, Alex, Kenny, and Ernesto. So what I'm going to do is just ask each of you to start with, we'll go down here and then we'll talk to Ernesto. Could you briefly describe yourself, your background, and what you're doing in the realm of getting broadband deployment?
Yeah.
Start with you, Kenny.
Everybody here? I'm Kenny Blakeslee, the founder and CEO of Apex Site Solutions. We're a wireless infrastructure contractor based out of Elk Grove. And so we do everything from building the cell phone towers to doing small cells on light poles and the JPA poles like you see. Basically, we're deploying 5G and 6G when that comes behind 5G. And we engineer and install systems that make cellular coverage and two-way radios work inside of buildings as well. So we do.
Thank you. And Adam.
Thank you, Trish. I want to thank Valley Vision for inviting AT&T to this today. And then my credit to CRC, what a beautiful campus. My first time here, I'm a community college graduate myself, and I wish my campus looked quite this nice, but in the parking garage, these facilities, very, very, very nice. Thanks again for having me here. I'm with AT&T. 25 years, my whole career has been with the construction and engineering department. So my whole career has been dedicated to expanding broadband opportunities. I started when we were just keeping up copper signals to get to people's houses for basic DSL. I've seen the transition to video over copper as we extended fiber to remote terminals in the neighborhoods. And then now the next evolution, of course, is fiber optics right to houses within new subdivisions. And then in particular, overbuild now. So neighborhoods that are currently served by copper, we are very aggressively going in and putting in fiber optic services so that people can hear at speeds that they need. In addition to the terrestrial connections, AT&T through 5G services is offering in a lot of areas AT&T Internet Air, which offers really, really good speeds if copper is your only solution right now. The investment is there, Trish, as you were mentioning. AT&T anticipates connections to over 30 million customer locations throughout our footprint this year. That's in addition to any wireless work that we're doing. So that's also in addition to, oh, thank you, sorry, Kathy. That's also in addition to any work that we're doing to take fiber to brand new subdivisions. So these connections are for neighborhoods that did not have fiber presence at all at this point. The digital divide is an issue that came up, and the chairman for AT&T is committed to spending a total of $5 billion by the end of 2030 on digital divide, rural, underserved areas for broadband. But I think of particular importance is a project that was just completed in Mendocino County and Comchi. AT&T got fiber to a connected learning center. And we anticipate doing 50 more sort of community outreach connections like we did in Comchi over the following years.
Thank you so much, Adam. And one thing to note is a lot of this funding in the past, which hasn't been very much to the need, has been household focused. Now these new investments can more broadly cover fiber and wireless for business uses, for anchor institutions, and that what Karen described, the middle mile, that's kind of like our highway, and then last mile is getting to all the locations. So all this investment we're talking about here is primarily for the last mile, although Ernesto will talk about the middle mile aspect of that. But I want to thank AT&T. It's been a great partner for us as well with our digital equity projects as well. Thank you. Alex.
Well, that's a great entry, Adam. Kind of talk about that piece of it. But my name is Alex Velazquez. I'm with MasTec North America. I too started at entry level about 25, 26 years ago. So I was at a young individual trying to figure out where this industry was going to go, and I fell in love with it. And I've been in it ever since. I did start in Southern California and came up to Tacoma, California about 18 years ago, and now I'm the division vice president for MasTec North America in California and Nevada markets. One of the things that we do provide is we do a variety of different things. So we provide communications, clean energy. We provide also oil and gas and transmission facilities throughout the actual state and Nevada. One of the things that we have been focusing on is preparing for the peaks and valleys as we build out what the providers are asking for us to do. So we do have a unique set of challenges that we have to constantly adapt to, and we have to get creative when we're trying to develop talent and bring in new personnel to try to keep up with the ask. When I saw the charts of the decline in the next 5 years, I was like, I'm not sure if that's accurate, but of all the conversations I've been having and what's really coming down the pipeline and really presents itself, you know, the unique set of challenges that we have to prepare for. So partnering with local colleges and the academies that we've actually created internally to help prepare for it has been quite a bit of a challenge, and we're up for it.
Yes, we're fired up and ready to go.
Yeah.
And also, I think what you'll see here is the diversity and the complexity of the way this industry works. Talking with Kenny and Alice, for instance, they work with many different companies. They're not the internet service provider, they're the construction infrastructure builder. And then, you know, AT&T has different ways that they do things as well. But you will see there's lots of different technologies also that you're working with, fixed and wireless and fiber and other kind of technologies. And we want to be a region that is able to deploy all of those technologies. So at this now, I'll ask Ernesto, if you can hear us, Ernesto, to give us a little background on you and your work.
Yes, I can hear you. My name is Ernesto Fermin. I work for Caltrans, State of California, Department of Transportation. I've been with the state for 34 years and in different capacities: design, construction, maintenance, and operation of the various communication systems that we have in place. Caltrans does have an extensive fiber system in place that we started, I suppose, building about 30 years ago. Now, currently, with regards to the middle mile broadband network, so the state is, I suppose, building the infrastructure and managing the middle mile portions. As far as Caltrans, we are building, I suppose, designing and constructing the portions that are in the state highway system, including what we're going to do as well is we're going to be developing and in the process of doing this is policies and that sort of thing for the last mile connections as well. So a lot of our work is going to include permit reviews and things like that, of portions that are on the state highway system for those last mile connections. And as far as like the construction and management of the system going forward, you know, a lot of our work is done through contract work. So we do employ a lot of private industry to do a lot of the maintenance and operation, including the construction of the infrastructure. So a lot of our jobs are review, policy, and that sort of thing, and managing contracts.
Thank you so much, Ernesto. And just to note that the state is building out 10,000 miles of this middle mile network, and if they started in other parts of the state, but they'll be coming into our region soon. The map that Karen showed you, you can look at the map and see where the segments are for the middle mile. Quite a bit of it is leased, but there is new build and co-building, and we're working closely with our Council of Governments on opportunities for joint use one stick smart projects. So that's another kind of nexus opportunity. And I think, Ernesto, what you mentioned too isn't just about the build, it's the maintenance and the operation. And I was reading something this morning from the Fiber Association about, because of the demands, that this is a national pressure on workforce, that, you know, how do we use things like software to help us manage our projects better too and get us through the process. So with next, I'm going to start with Kenny again, and then we'll rotate. But I wanted to ask you all, what did you think about the data that Ebony presented? Did anything surprise you or anything different from what you expected? So I know we've already mentioned that that's more retrospective and what's coming, but Kenny, any insights or ideas on what you saw from Ebony's presentation?
I think Alex hit on the future. Certainly from our perspective, looks a lot more optimistic than what was on there, and even looking retrospectively. So it makes me wonder exactly what data is reflected. Just when I look at certain numbers up there, in 2022 specifically, our company, even just some of our main competitors in the region, and list out more new jobs that were needed and more job postings just amongst, you know, the big 3 or 4 competitors in the region, and say that we had what was listed there. Could be a terminology thing, it could be a NACE code thing, but I think definitely the numbers are higher than what's reflected there, and there's been a long-term shortage in terms of the workforce for what we're trying to accomplish. We've spent the last few years with more demand than we can respond to, and the biggest linchpin for us, it wasn't capital, it wasn't equipment, it was people. And so, you know, we've been on the search, and we've been looking for creative solutions in terms of how do we find more folks that can be successful in our industry doing what we do. How do we get them in the door? How do we get them trained up? How do we make them sticky? And how do we advance them in their career as fast as possible? And that's been an ongoing problem for a number of years, and we see it continuing into the future too. So solutions and collaboration and partnership, I think, are definitely needed. So, you know, I guess when you're looking at the big picture that was on some of those slides, maybe there's a reflection of other trades or other jobs that were reflected in there. But I think when I can look around, and sure, we're a little fish in a big pond, but I can tell you in our world, we absolutely are looking for more people to come in and do the work that we need done.
Thank you, Kenny. And I'm happy to hear that there's a lot of opportunity. It is a problem that we need to help address, but I think it's a real call to action to our educational workforce system. And that's a great thing about this ongoing partnership too, and working with Ebony, is we can work with you all to kind of get more of that data and knowledge infused into the analytics so that we can project better but work real time. And we'll talk about that a little bit, some partnership opportunities, but thank you, Kenny. Adam.
Yeah, I enjoyed looking through that data. It basically confirmed what you kind of just see with your own eyes. Both the greatest declines and increases were with the technicians and on the sales side of telecom. The declines make sense to me. Every company is looking to be more efficient. The fewer people needed to do work means the more work that you can actually do, the more customers that you can reach. So the transition for AT&T and I think other incumbent providers from a copper embedded network to fiber is going to lead to a lot of the technician declines. Copper is a very maintenance intensive infrastructure. Fiber, not nearly as much. But you did see ads in that technician segment, and I'd like to say it was all because of growth. And growth is certainly a component, but some of the demographics on the age of the workforce definitely come into play. I have 25 years, and that's not uncommon where I work, and especially in the construction department. 20 to 25 years or more is the vast majority of the employees. So as people attrit from the business for retirement, other reasons, we're constantly looking to bring new people on. And I did fail to mention one thing, Trish. The growth here for the Sacramento MSA, so I guess that would be like the core 6-7 counties. We're forecasted next year to complete fiber connections, and this is exclusive of new subdivisions. So this would be strictly overlaid in copper tracks today, over 20,000 customer locations. So you multiply that by 2.5 or 3 people per household, and that is just fiber dedicated to a home. That's not beefing up cell sites for AT&T Internet Air. The forecast for 2026 are at least on par. And when you expand the Sacramento MSA to say the Sacramento DMA, which is going to bring in Modesto and Stockton, and I'm sure plenty of those people come here to work every day, the number's more than double. So if we were at a factor of 20,000 households, it's probably getting a lot closer to 50,000. So the commitment is there for us to get fiber out and improve wireless service.
It's a huge change, and you need to be ready for that.
Sure.
That change, and I think you might have read some of this about the copper. I mean, in a lot of our communities, like West Sacramento, we're doing the broadband plan, and some of the older neighborhoods have that. So we're excited to see this opportunity to get everybody up to the speeds we need. So, thank you, Alex. Adam, Alex, you guys are confusing me, but you're.
And I'll just add a little bit of color to that. That's exactly some of the challenges that we're facing. So I'm agreeing with both these gentlemen here. Is I think the chart is demonstrating as far as some of the flexibility. One of the challenges that we have is the advanced services now is changing, and how our technicians are moving from copper or giving coaxial and changing to more of the optical side. So training those individuals, bringing them up into the actual career funnel, and having replacements, but still keeping that core group that does the main infrastructure is also key. So those are the challenges that we've had. Employees that have been started from as a lineman or an underground technician, and then moving up into the optical side or the advanced services that the providers are actually rolling out. And those are the challenges that we constantly have, to where we're having to figure out how do we organically educate our teams in for advanced services, but still have the replacements coming in for the core infrastructure portion of it.
Right, you know, an important point's been mentioned about the retirees. We see this in every sector, and how do you fill those gaps of long-term skills, as well as prepare for that next generation of skills that are evolving with the technology. So, Ernesto, what do you think about the data that you saw?
Yeah, so for, I would say for Caltrans and some of the government agencies, we've always had trouble actually filling positions, the skill sets for those types of work. So lots of times what we'll do is we'll put out a contract for some of that work. And even with that, sometimes we have trouble with private companies being able to provide the skill set for that type of work. So just that's from let's say from a Caltrans fiber system perspective. Now, with regards to the middle mile broadband network that's being installed, I'm thinking that there's actually going to be increase in the work that we're going to have to be doing involved with that sort of thing. And those types of things would be, I would say, things like plan review, coordination with MMB and providers and that, and last mile connection type folks. So I think, and program, I guess, program management. So I think actually there's going to be increase in the I suppose, workforce for supporting MMBN and last mile connections.
I think that's kind of making the case for a broader review of all kind of occupations that would really be needed to move these investments forward. So I'll start now with you. We're going to go a little bit more granular. Ernesto, could you talk about a little bit more specifically some of the occupations and skills needed, since you've already talked about that a little bit, where you see we're going to have the most needs?
So for I suppose I'm going to talk about from the Caltrans perspective. So from perspective, we will need electrical engineers. That's one classification we use. Another one is technicians, and they're probably going to be more on the inspection side, because anytime one comes in and does projects on state right away, that requires a permit, and then it requires an inspection. So we'll have staff doing inspection as well. So first is the permit review, design review, and then the actual work that's being done, that's inspection. So behind that, there's also administrative staff that have to manage the permits and so on and so forth, that sort of thing. So we do have those folks as well. And even behind that, there's also other individuals that do permit review from various from our various units. But so I would say the skill sets are like the engineers, the technicians, and support staff and on the administrative side of things.
Thank you. This is a big discussion in this world, is the permit streamlining piece, both with Caltrans and then the local.
Yes, yeah. And we're working with CDT and preparing for those permit reviews and looking at streamlining those applications as well. Just because the build is an aggressive build, and I think we're on track and making sure that it continues that way.
Thank you, Ernesto. The state, by the way, also has prepared a permit streamlining handbook for any of you, if you want to give that to your local jurisdictions, best practices. Alex, how about you from your perspective, going down a little deeper on occupations, et cetera?
It's actually really broad, right, for us, because we are a full turnkey, so we have to really fill a lot of gaps. So the engineering side for us is very big to get the front end side going to transition into the actual construction funnel. So getting a little bit more granular for us would be entry level ground technicians, the equipment operators, aerial linemen has been a big need for us. We have partnered with local, lineman schools to be able to try to fulfill that piece of it, while also developing an academy to be able to do that as well. So equipment operators, aerial linemen, splicers from all variety, from the traditional copper to coaxial and fiber splicers is a big demand for us. Installers in not just outside plant, but internal ISP installers as well. So we do both in the right-of-way work and in the facilities. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty much covering a lot of from the tying point from the hub locations that were shown earlier, all the way to the actual install, down to the equipment behind the TV set or within the home or the commercial building itself. So a really large variety of a need.
Really a complex environment for workforce, especially considerations.
Yes, one of the things that we've been trying to do is get creative, as Adam mentioned earlier, is be diverse, cross-training those individuals, and that way, when those peaks and valleys really come in, we're able to adapt and shift and move those personnel around to be able to be diverse and to be able to do multiple things, not just a specific waterfall of a job function. Thank you.
How about you, Adam?
Well, specifically tied to the broadband work, like Alex was mentioning, definitely technicians to add to replace from attrition. The sales team, consumer business is always hiring also. Outside plant engineers, and then electrical engineers, and that would be on our RAN side, or basically the mobility wireless type engineers.
And Adam, does AT&T do most of the builds through internal teams, or do you also work with companies?
It's both. And full disclosure, Alex is our construction, specifically our excavation partner for the North Valley, and then a couple other areas within AT&T's footprint. Yes, I believe you're here in this area also.
We actually, right now, we actually have a lot of footprint. We actually cover from multiple areas here in Sacramento, and we extend all the way down into the Bakersfield. So we cover pretty much the entire Central Valley, from Chico all the way down into the Bakersfield portion of AT&T's territory.
So when we determine we're going to go into a neighborhood that's copper fed today, it's Alex's team that's going to go trench up those streets so that we can place conduit.
And that's the one everybody gets mad at, right?
Well, they get mad at us also. They get mad at us also, but they're really happy once it's done, right? And what I'll tell the jurisdictions that are unhappy is, hey, AT&T's big and slow. We're easy to catch. If you guys have issues, find us. We're very responsive to threats, right? Right, Alex?
Yes, we are quick to try to figure out and come up with a solution if there is one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. Most of our employees live and work in these neighborhoods. Why would we want to leave a mess, right? So I think those are the primary positions. Yes, we leverage our work resources through outside vendors. And then also on that outside plant design and even on the RAN engineering side, we do have vendors that assist with that, but we do want to have a core of AT&T employees to keep that going. And it's like, as I mentioned, as people leave the business for one reason or another, we're very aggressively backfilling those spots and getting people trained.
Great, thank you. And Kenny, we had a fascinating discussion, not knowing even about the work outside, but inside the buildings too. So if you could talk about the range of occupations and needs you see in the work of the wireless, fixed wireless, and other infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, like I said, little fish, big pond. We're also a vendor for AT&T on their wireless side too, so I don't know that. But I think all the things Alex talked about, so I would double down on his statements. It is diverse. It is the ancillary trades that really help to support it. So it's not just tower climbers, it's not just fiber splicers, it's the excavation that goes on, it's the directional drilling that goes on, it's all those things. And then I would double down on the electrical engineering, especially with an RF or a propagation focus. We're talking a lot, and I think most of the focus when it comes to BEAD funding and comes to broadband goes to fiber, but there are many solutions that are out there. There's fixed wireless, there's private networks. There's going to be a lot of different solutions that can come into play. And so having people that can analyze the problem, where are we lacking broadband coverage, and then come up with the optimal solution, not just the one that's going to fit the company's motivation, but what is the right solution to fix this coverage or broadband connectivity problem in each individual scenario. There's going to be many tools in the toolbox, and so you have to have people that understand those different tools, when's the right time to use them, and learn how to deploy them properly from there. So I think there is a lot of electrical engineering, especially when it comes to RF and propagation, that goes along with it as well. That's going to help to bridge this digital divide.
And can you talk a little bit more about what happens inside the buildings too?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two components to it. Number one, cellular coverage, right? So, you know, most people are ditching landlines these days and going wireless. And so if you're trying to use your cell phone inside of a building and it doesn't work, that's a problem. And it's more and more of a problem these days due to building materials. Energy efficient buildings become very bad for cell coverage. Well, they're blocking out the energy of the sun. They're also blocking out the energy from cell phone towers. So inside of buildings is also a problem that needs to be solved, and it goes for two-way radios for first responders as well. So there's a lot of, back to the point, there's a lot of technicians needed there for the installations, but also you're talking about, once again, back to the RF engineering portion of it. Although it's become kind of the next utility, right, like water, like electricity, you know, wireless coverage is necessary these days inside of buildings. it isn't as simple as some of those other ones. The infrastructure isn't there. There's different factors that go into it. So the skills needed to engineer and deploy a system that is functional, not just in the building, but doesn't affect the outdoor macro network for either public safety communications or for cellular coverage. It's a different skill set, and it's an advanced skill set. So continue to double down on the fact that we absolutely need more electrical engineers. I love when we call it RF nerds. We need more RF nerds out there. And it's a dying breed. There's less and less of them these days. That's people in the radio coverage, in the tinkering with radios, etc. So it's a difficult skill set to find, and it's one that we really have to cultivate from the ground up. If people are coming in more skilled to be able to advance them and grow their careers faster, and that's really what we're all about. And that's, I might be a little off topic here, but that is one of these. Both of these gentlemen talked about how long they've been in the industry. I was the same way. I started out digging trenches on the ground, and then advanced to climbing towers, and then to project management, and then to starting my own company. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity that takes place in this industry, and I think it really gets looked over. And a lot of people miss out on this opportunity that you can take advantage of without necessarily having to get a degree. Just some baseline education can occur, which can be in partnership with community college, but the opportunity that's available is often overlooked, and it's something that should not be so overlooked, and we need to change the mindset and the stereotypes of the trades and get more people interested in this type of work and realizing the opportunity, how quickly you can advance and grow an exciting career.
I think that so many people don't realize what this all is, what this looks like. And even the analysis was kind of around a couple occupations as opposed to more broadly, but the kind of things that you're dealing with, the complexity of things like public safety networks and what the next generation of technologies is and how we need to, what kind of skilled workforce. I think also, Kenny, you're talking about the front end, and it's been mentioned too, Alex, I think, and you all, is the design part of it. Like you were saying, we need to write engineering and design solutions too, right? Front end.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a big component of it as well. And that's where there's opportunity also.
Well, this leads right into the next question, which is about educational attainment levels and how can community colleges be included with future projects or employment. And we helped the discussion with the colleges about the agility and the flexibility needed, because it doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be a 2-year degree. It could be certificates or other short-term training, but it also can be the pipeline into the 4-year for maybe the engineering degrees and things like that. It's the continuum of the pipeline. So just with the lens of the role that the community colleges can play and the information they need to because they're taking this in and adapting and designing too. I'll start with you, Kenny, but what do you think is the path forward with the college side?
Well, I think first off, I mean, this I mentioned, there's industry associations that are working on this too, and are looking to partner with things like community colleges. For instance, in the tower industry, the National Association of Tower Erectors, is our industry association, and they've developed an entire curriculum and program that they can partner with community colleges. They've done it successfully in other regions across the country, and they developed programs that are shorter term. They can be for credit, non-credit, apprenticeship type programs, but they've already developed the curriculum and everything that goes into it. So I would just say, lean on your resources, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if something is already there that you can partner with and put to use for your students and for local employers, then by all means do it. And I think if I were to speak just selfishly from an employer's perspective, one of our biggest problems is, because we'll teach most of the skills, the on-the-job training mentioned on the slide, I thought was one of the things that was spot on, and that there is long-term on-the-job training that goes into it in a positive way, because we will continue to invest and grow these people. One of the biggest things we need is just to vet out, is this person actually going to enjoy this type of work? So we invest a ton of money into folks that join the team up front, and they can quite often wash out because it wasn't what they expected, or when even climbing the heights, right? We have no way to test them until we train them and invest the money to train them to climb the heights. Once we've invested that money, all of a sudden they get up there and you go, oh, wait, never mind. I thought I was scared. Right? So, yeah, it's when I first started this work in the climbing tower, I was scared about it. I just got forced into it and got used to it. But so I think even just getting people acclimated and exposed to the work, getting some time into making sure that it is something that they'll enjoy would be a huge boost to employers specifically. And what you hit on is these are interesting jobs because it's a blend of manual labor with technical skills. So you've got to be able to handle both sides of it. You've got to have the brain to be able to deal with the technical side of things. And if you're working on active networks, there's more and more demands these days. You've got to be able to work around an active network and not make a decision that's going to knock down that network, because you're talking about big problems for an AT&T or whoever else, right? So you have to have that technical know-how, that technical prowess, along with the ability to do manual labor. Be out in the sun, be out in the elements, be out in the cold sometimes. And so it's interesting folks that come in and are successful in this. And so it's not everybody. I'll never claim it's for everybody. I'll never claim it's easy. I'll just claim for those that make it, it's worth it because of the amount of opportunities here. So I think that those are the ways that we can partner with community colleges, continue to develop the skills, but then also just help to find the right people that are going to be a good fit for this type of work, and then help to put them into a pipeline that we can then take them and continue to invest in them and grow them from there.
That's fantastic too, because that's what this system wants to do, is provide opportunities for people to grow, improve their incomes and skills, and, you know, find a home in a company that's committed to them.
And one other item from the slides that I noticed was the median wages that it mentioned, at least for our type of work, definitely seem low. We start a little bit on the higher end, and then there's the other fringe benefits, and then there's always significant overtime opportunities. So I have many tower climbers who are making six figures, still out in the field. They've only been doing it a couple of years, and annually they're making over $100,000 a year. So, you know, it's
A good story to tell too. Yeah, thank you very much, Kenny. How about you, Abby?
This is on the education.
Mm-hmm. And kind of the educational attainment, but, you know, aligning with community colleges. I did just want to say, Kenny, the things that you mentioned about the industry associations, we're familiar with some, but not many. So if you all can help us with those connections, that's really helpful too.
the request made from the other side too. So yeah, we will do that.
Yeah, I would say on the technician side, the certificates that Ebony shared would definitely make an applicant stand out from the rest. That would be a great track, and it's definitely gonna put someone in a better position with someone who has no experience. Kenny mentioned it, MasTec does it. There's a tremendous amount of training on the job, the formal and on the job type training. For a RAN, RF mobility engineer, yeah, electrical engineering degree is going to be an absolute prerequisite. If someone's interested in outside plant design, construction management, bachelor's is probably a great track, or something with along the lines of information technology. And then on the sales side, kind of depending on the sales job, right? So for a entry-level sales position, likely just a high school diploma. Something more supervisory would require a degree. And I'm glad Kenny made that point. AT&T has two sides. One's very lopsided from a revenue standpoint. That's our mobility, right? And the way the mobility side of the company was set up from inception, basically acquiring smaller local wireless companies, it is primarily, I'd say well over 90% of the money spent in the mobility market on labor is vendors like Kenny, like MasTec. Very small on the AT&T side. So if you have students who are interested in careers in wireless, these companies are probably fantastic ways into that business, because there's not a tremendous amount of employees coming straight in to AT&T mobility on the build side.
Thank you. Sure. And to the point about the pathways, that state has a construction management program, is that right? So, you know, this is a continuum that we're trying to build here too.
Sure.
So, thank you, Alex.
Yeah, just to add to Kenny, well said, transparency. What are they really getting into? Or is it something that they really want to do? So we do have a group of advisors that we do communicate and maybe mold the curriculum as far as show them what it really is, to so they can understand of what they're going to be facing, some of the challenges that they have, and to guide them a path of exactly how to get to that point, because it could be something to where they may not want to be a directional drill operator or a locator, that they want to be more on the PMO side of managing projects, and at what level and what sizing, down to a technician piece is molding what that curriculum really looks like, but really understanding what that ask is going to be before you actually climb 200 feet up in the air and say, no thanks, I need to figure out how to get down, right? So,
That's the bucket thingy.
exactly. So, for us, it's getting with advisors and figure out what the curriculum is, and for them to understand exactly what direction they really want to follow in.
Thank you. Ernesto, how about you, from your perspective?
Yeah, so from a employment perspective, we use generally three classes, I guess, three job classifications. One of them being electrical engineer, electrician, and electrical engineering technician. So the electrician positions, so what the state has is what we call job specifications, and the job specifications portions of those, they have the requirements as far as education and experience. So for the electrical engineering technician, for example, one of your programs that you listed fits that qualification. So I think it was the technology program. So they could come into Caltrans with that into that particular position. Electrician, it's a combination of, it could be an apprentice program, or also they also take some of the community college education as part of that qualification. For the electrical engineering classification, community college can be a pathway to the electrical engineering degree. I myself, I started at a community college in Los Angeles, and then I completed my education at a state college in Long Beach. So it was a perfect pathway for me, and actually a economical way of completing my education towards that goal. So community college can be a very good, I think, pathway in any one of those areas.
And one thing I'm wondering too with the data, if Caltrans, for instance, would be grouped in the industry data as public sector. So some of the occupations and jobs are not maybe reflected in the so-called in-plan data or the NAICS codes. They're in a different NAICS code than this sector.
Yeah, and one thing about I suppose the public sector jobs, at least for Caltrans, you're hired. Once you're hired, you have opportunities to go into different areas as well. And normally someone that gets hired stays with Caltrans for a while. So, and again, it's not as if you get into one position, you stay in that position, you have opportunities to broaden your skills and get experience in other areas as well.
I think one thing, this is a good cue for us, because there is another kind of industry cluster in the area. It's called Innovative Pathways for Public Partnerships. And it's all there. People don't, maybe some people don't see that the public sector pathways just in all the state, federal, and local agencies has a huge range of occupations too. If you think of local governments with information technology departments and public works and things like that, there's probably complementary opportunities, as well as the permitting and the administrative side. Sort of one last question as we're thinking about this, opportunities to partner with the community colleges to develop the pipeline. I know you mentioned advisory meetings. A lot of the local colleges have advisory meetings. We do this process to try to get sort of a broader regional perspective, but then there's work down at the local levels. And as you saw from what Ebony showed, the different colleges have different kind of specializations, or, you know, is there a way to fit in? I think, Penny, what you were talking about kind of lends itself possibly to maybe work-based learning opportunities, apprenticeships were mentioned, you know, sort of, so how can we help facilitate working with you all to work with the colleges on opportunities to help build this pipeline together. Kenny, do you want to start? Big question. You're up for it.
Yeah, no, I think I know I'm a little bit low, but it's creating some programs, and even leveraging programs that have already been developed, in order to create that people pipeline. And then, you know, give us the opportunity to interact with some of these folks and get them on board and get them into our programs to where we can take them from where they're at, take them to the next level, and help them build a big career and a big future for themselves and their families. The other thing that I see, and this is a much broader topic, much deeper topic, I would say, but I think that back to the point that the trades, which, you know, a lot of the work that goes into broadband is the trades, not necessarily other types of, you know, degree requiring jobs, but it's the trade. The trade's been demonized for decades, in terms of, you know, that's plan B. You got to go to college. And if you can't go to college and you can't cut it, then you turn to the trades, and that's going to be a rough life. That's been the outlook since the 50s, 60s. And I just think it's not true anymore. I think that the opportunities that are out there in the trades, you can make a lot of money pretty quickly. You get great benefits pretty quickly. The old adage that it's really hard on your body and you're going to age too quickly. The growth and the opportunity that's there, people are advancing out of the field and doing the hard manual very quickly. You know, a few years, and oftentimes people are getting themselves maybe too fast, right? But into some office positions, into some leadership positions. So that is the growth trajectory that is along the lines of these trades. So I think just, you know, sorry for lack of a better term, but making the trades a little bit more sexy again, right? So maybe if it was funneling through.
We're looking at you.
Oh, but if it were to funnel through community colleges into the trades a little bit, right, then that could maybe make it more appealing for, you know, especially the parents, right? Is it usually the child that's worried about that, or is it the parents that are worried about, oh, little Johnny's got to get into college, I got to show that off to my friends? Are they, you know, are they really worried about that? Well, you get funneled through a community college and then get into a trade. That could be a way to make it more appealing and less of that's something that's looked down upon. So I think that's a mindset that has to shift. Like I said, could be a much bigger topic. Sorry if I don't.
No. It is a big topic. It comes up a lot in the conversations that we have across the industries. It's a big issue because, like you're mentioning with parents, it goes back to the early times. And I know here they have an event at the college with the industry, the construction industry, where they work with the high schools and, you know, try to support that back even into the lower grades. How do you open people's minds, parents, counselors, teachers, to support the whole industry and create the mindset that it's a great opportunity and it's needed. We need these skilled workers for our communities.
Yeah, the world is changing. It's having to continually shift and change with it and change that mindset.
Thank you. You have
We're pretty active with participation. I know I've done at least a couple job fairs with state colleges and with community colleges. And at AT&T.jobs, there's about 8 different categories of employment opportunities. It's actually really easy to use. You can type in the part of the country where you want to work. You can search by kind of job industry within AT&T, but there's a section dedicated to students. And within there, it explains opportunities for internships, formal internships. There's job shadowing. There's also opportunities to become kind of a leadership development sort of a graduate, which would require a 4-year degree. But I know that AT&T is active in supporting these job fairs. And so I think just keeping us informed to make sure we have a presence, we'd love to participate.
How about you, Alex?
A lot of the same. For us, there's we can go to the site and there'll be opportunities for internships. I think one of the things that would be a great partnership that we've done in the past is with our recruiting teams and advisors to come in and speak to the students and figure out little opportunities of what's going to be coming up, even forecast projections of what specific trades are really going to be at a high percentage demand in certain areas. Seems there's a little interest in, again, going back to the curriculum, figuring out what are the steps you're gonna need to, fulfill that ask, if you're interested in any of those communication pieces.
Thank you. And how about you, Ernesto?
Yeah, so Caltrans does hold, hosts job fairs in all sorts of different areas. One thing that they have done in the past also is to go to the colleges and participate in the job fairs as well. So that's a good way of knowing and being introduced to the jobs that we have available. The other thing that we do have is student intern / student assistant positions. So looking into those as well can give exposure to the company, and not just Caltrans, but other agencies, California state agencies as well.
Thank you.
Real quick, something that I love that Alex said was the opportunity to speak to maybe some of the classes or some of the students, and not necessarily from someone like myself, although I could speak to the fact that I started in the field in the beginning, but even if some of our folks that are still within the company and are growing their careers, but they could speak to the experience that they've had of going to these roles and what they've been able to build for themselves. So I think that's absolutely an exciting idea, would be an exciting opportunity. I know our folks would love to do that, and I think it could be eye-opening for a lot of students.
I'd love to take you up on that, because I think students hearing from people who have had that experience, that lived experience, really, it relates to them in a really tangible way. And I do want to say too, that in addition to working with you all on the workforce side, out in the community, really appreciate hearing from all of you and working with you. I know Kenny came to us through our colleague Michelle Swanson at Crown Castle. We're working with Comcast and our other providers. So we're trying to create a resource for all of you so that we can connect our community and create great jobs for people. And so on the Broadband Consortium side, we can also help facilitate this, and hearing from you and how we can lift this discussion up to the state partners. And, I was really impressed actually by the NTIA information that was in Ebony's presentation of the thinking of helping us define better what these occupations are. But you're all on the ground, you're in the field, so really helping us understand how we can support you better. I think there's time for a little bit of Q&A.
Yes, just a little.
But I would like to thank our fabulous panel.
Were there any questions from in the audience in person? I know there were some online in the chat.
There were a few questions, and also a couple comments from Greg Todd.
Do you want to go and speak to them and then?
I can speak to it if you want.
Okay, thanks.
Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay. So I've been bouncing around. I'm sort of semi-retired, but I've been bouncing around trying to pass on my knowledge to the next generation. And I tried in high school, and now I'm working I'm volunteering at a adult ed, and I'm trying to get on the staff at Sac City. I've taught, also at like ITT Tech, but I have a ton of experience in a myriad of industries. And one thing I learned when I was in the K through 12 section was that their model is flawed. There's a ton of students that have no desire to go to college. They're not academically suited to go it. Maybe they're just immature in some cases, but there needs to be some way to get them into the trades. As you were saying before, there's a lot of money out there. I have several electrician friends that their companies make $2 million a year. Now they don't take that home, but there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of automation out there. The telecommunication has a lot of stuff, a lot of high-tech equipment for troubleshooting and all that stuff. And I think a lot of the students are very capable of that. I'm working with Sac City now, trying to redevelop their electronics technician course and also integrate that with their industrial maintenance course. One of the things I do as a retired guy is I work at a machine shop here in Elk Grove, And I spent a lot of time fixing welders and CNCs and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the people can't even read a schematic, and they don't understand what PLCs are. They don't understand what pneumatics are and hydraulics, and nobody teaches that I know about. And they don't even they teach it a little bit more in college. Granted, I graduated a long time ago. Is there, what I'd like to do is get more information. I'm on an information mission. So if I could, is there any way to visit some of these places or talk to some of you guys to kind of get a good feeling of, am I on the right track? Is this what you really need? So that would be awesome in helping me help them develop that program.
Greg, if you could put your email in the chat, we can follow up with you. And I will say the things you're mentioning too, we have worked with the colleges, including City College, on things like the CNC control and the manufacturing side. So I think what you're kind of talking to actually is all these design engineering. You heard so much about the engineering side, the maintenance engineers, as well as the electrical, that there's a cross, that skills adjacency. So if you could give your,
Put it in the chat.
Yeah.
And I've got two questions.
Okay.
Go. So these are two questions that were from the chat. One says, how can local K-12 adult schools help prepare adults to be ready for these jobs through career technical education? So if you could just give maybe some ideas about how the K-12 could maybe prepare adults. Yeah, the K-12, adult schools. If there's any kind of advice or thing you would want to share for an adult education program.
Adult ed or K-12?
It's adult ed in K through 12, sorry.
Okay.
So it's called K through 12 adults. Am I saying your question correctly, Nita?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing this up. So so there's adult ed within K-12 school districts. So every school district has a local adult school. And so, like the community college, we are preparing adults through a career and technical ed program. And so, these courses can vary, right? You can prepare medical assistants, you can prepare phlebotomists, et cetera, et cetera. And so in this particular case, manufacturing, right? So welding, many adult schools have different offerings throughout the state. So I'm just very curious as to, what career tech ed courses can we start looking into developing to help prepare and support these efforts?
For splicing and fiber maintenance would be huge. I just have to make one more point. Kenny brought up a great point about the trades. It is a serious issue. These are ultimately the people that get the work done specific to what we're talking about. And I think what the community colleges and state colleges could do a better job of is explaining that those aren't mutually exclusive tracks between being a contractor or a college graduate. Actually, it's probably the best melding of both worlds. I just had this conversation with my little 8th grader 2 weeks ago. What do you want to do for a living? Because he's very handy, loves to make stuff just for fun. I said, think about construction management, civil engineering, but your end career goal should be to be a contractor. Why? Because young kids don't know how to do that sort of work.
I think the other thing maybe with the adult ed is that a lot of students are people from other countries. They're mature adults. They've had, we have a big population of people coming from other parts of the world that experience distress and conflict, but they come with skills. And how can we help people get into pipelines that can meet some of the immediate workforce needs too of the employers? So I think that's a great question too about the adult ed schools, and I think they're part of the cohort of this, right?
Yes, and I have one more final question from the chat, which is, do you have clear background for, do you expect clear backgrounds for positions, or do you, to be a little bit more clear, can reentry folks, people who have prior convictions, They're justice involved. Thank you. Are they eligible for some of these positions?
Many of them, yes. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. What I'm allowed to say. So I would answer yes, I guess. In most circumstances. For us, it would be at the level of the severity, in the position that we'll be putting them in. If it's something that we're not really, tied with the public or putting them at risk, it's a case by case basis, specific to the severity of the background.
And I don't know, but we could probably get you guys in touch with the recruiting at AT&T, and it would depend, I think, on the position.
Thank you. And Ernesto, did you have any thoughts about that? Or policy? I don't know what the state positions are.
Could you repeat the question? It was sort of, I couldn't hear it very well.
In regard to these positions, do you guys consider justice involved positions as the people as they apply?
Standby.
Okay, so if somebody has a prior, if someone has a prior conviction on their record. Oh, you're muted, Ernesto.
I'm having audio issues, I think, here.
Well, we can come back, but yeah, thank you. Thank you to Trish. Thank you to all the panelists. Oh, there's one more question. Sorry.
Just on the K-12 preparation side, I was wondering if any of you had thoughts, because there's significant funding to start some of these programs in high school. But I think the biggest issue that we have is finding teachers or people from the industry who's willing to take a pay cut to actually come in and teach these skills. So do you guys have any ideas on how to recruit from the industry to bring them into high schools to help teach and prepare kids to go into these jobs?
Could folks online hear that question? If you couldn't, Ashley from Saba asked a question about if there was opportunities within these organizations and agencies, or they had any advice on how to get teachers who would be willing to take a pay cut or adjust their schedule to come and teach these classes for youth.
I think you saw the numbers about the ages of many of the folks that are in the industries, and they're coming close to retirement. So that would be the folks that I would think would be ideal. People are living longer these days, retire earlier. There's many more years in retirement. So to have a career like that, or something to move to after they retire from the trades, would probably be a good option. I'd imagine you'd probably find a lot of people like the gentleman who spoke earlier who are looking to educate. So retired folks in the trades, I would imagine would probably be a great target. And there's a lot more of them retired these days.
That's exactly what came to mind for me. And I know when we have an employee who's leaving the business, we have a checklist of things that they need to look over. It would be great to talk to AT&T, probably corporate, and ask if a link to coordinate with a local school would be an option so that they can transition into something more part-time, or where they can afford less of a salary. But that is your base for educating people that age.
Absolutely. We face the same thing. A lot of our most experienced senior individuals just don't want to keep doing what they're doing. They want to have a lesser role. They want to have a little bit less stress but they do want to pay it forward because they get excited about it. Like the gentleman on the call where he wants to pay it forward. One of the things I really enjoy is how I came up to the position where I'm at, was paying back to the individuals that taught me. So it's really communicating that piece of who we have, and as we continue to try to expand that side, as they're getting ready to take lesser roles, is we do encourage and provide and help them see if they want to educate and pay it forward, and how do we do that? How do we partner with the local the areas to be able to do that? So we're constantly looking at that. We have a large pool of individuals that are getting ready, just like Adam said, in the checklist of, are you really ready to retire, or is this something maybe you can do as a lesser role because you don't want to take on this massive middle mile project, and you don't want to face all those adversity on a consistent basis, and just help bring up and train the new next generations.
It's a beautiful way to end, is to pay it forward. Thank you, Alex.
Well, thank you, Trish, and the panelists. We really appreciate your contributions today, and I'm going to pass it over to Lena. Yeah.
And our panelists, I'll let you off the hook. If you'd like to go back to your seat, thank you so much. My name is Kate. So thanks so much to the panelists for wonderful information, and I like what Kenny was talking about, being responsive to communities and what solutions really work for them and not just for the interest of companies. And I like what Adam and Alex were saying about just the different kinds of jobs and kinds of projects coming. And I didn't want to tell Adam that actually in my county, no one's maintaining the copper. So we'll be glad to have everyone switch over soon. With that in mind, we have the data showing the historical data, we have the new data of what is about to come. And I chose Consumers River because we actually have a really responsive construction program, and I think this building and this campus are a model of how industry and how responsive CRC can be sometimes. And so we have lots of great community colleges in our greater Sacramento area, but this is a great campus and program to start some of those partnerships with. And I want to introduce Brian Connolly, who's the a professor and rock star in the construction program here, and his counterpart from Sac City to be able to talk about some of the times that they've been responsive in the past and a little bit about that program. So please welcome Brian.
You guys, I'll try to use the microphone, or I can just.
The microphone.
Yeah.
People on Zoom here.
Yeah, so I'm Ryan Connolly. I'm the lead faculty in the construction program here. I'm also the department chair over our program, the building inspection program, construction management. And so I've been lucky to be involved in a lot of different moving parts here on this campus. I'm glad Alina mentioned this building. It was built because of industry support. It was the first LEED platinum design building in our district. Salute to our programs, but when Alina asked me to come talk about the information and communication sector, I thought, you know, I'm like a blue collar carpenter guy. So I really like what you had said about how I think we need to bring sexy back to the trades. I was actually in a meeting, I was at a Zoom last night, partnered with the department chair at the Sac State's construction management program, working with Swingers and a large contractor. And it was a Zoom setup for parents and high school kids to just kind of highlight what is attractive about this industry. And how do we break down some of the stereotypes where, like you said, it's kind of the backup plan. A little bit about me. I grew up, my dad was a blue collar guy. He painted cars for a living, got nothing to do with construction. But I grew up with a respect for craftsmanship and hard work and, you know, waking up early, coming home dirty. You know, I was taught that value of work ethic and craftsmanship. So I was also an athlete, something that I think is kind of overlooked by the construction workforce development world of, you know, high school athletes I think can be easily attracted to the trades because we know that it can be physical. We work toward platforms within the industry that where you can work, someone was saying that you can kind of work your way out of the field within a few years, you know, highlighting those things to parents at an early age. I think it's important. I think the opportunity to explain about, I think there's a much higher awareness in the room than I was expecting about the platforms that we have, like community colleges and the four-year schools, and how we can be responsive to industry needs. I appreciate that Elena thought we were doing halfway decent over here. You know, my program started in 1999. The Building Industry Association came to Los Rios and said, we know there's going to be a boom. We need workers. Los Rios created a program for trades. You know, what I teach is a trades readiness program. It was designed and built to be a certificate program, which is the short duration. You can 6 months, hell, at one point it was only 3 months. The program is designed around workforce development. So from 2000 to 2008, we were rock stars. What happened in 2008? All of a sudden now you got no work for anybody. Well, what happened? Well, then we pivoted toward when our advisory committee said, well, we know there's going to be a big demand for energy auditing and green building. So we kind of shifted the program around to meet that need. Changed up curriculum, did that for a while. And we were rock stars for a while until about 2014, pretty short turnaround time. Then we had the industry, the construction was regaining momentum, and we had kind of, frankly, we had kind of saturated the market with energy, certified energy officers. And so we kind of began to try to teach both classes. Turns out we now have energy and energy management kind of built into the construction program. Advisory committees also told us there was a shortage of solar panel installers. We did a very small 2-course sequence of under the construction umbrella for what does it take to figure it out. And the truth is, it's just the blue collar side of the industry. We need the trades. We need people who value the work, who want to get up, who want to travel, who want to reach those higher paying journey level jobs in industries that pay well. So I just wanted to point out that I think it's important for all of our platforms, including the K-12 system, to be present and be open-minded and have industry partners who are willing to take their time and come tell us help us keep current. I like to think we're responsive, but the truth is we kind of are slow. It took almost 1.5 years for us to get that program up and running. So it's important that you industry partners understand it takes the foresight. We're responsive, but we're not quite as nimble as we think we are. It takes a little bit longer. So that's a reality of the industry. But the only thing I wanted to point out, and I agreed with everything I heard was in the last 30 minutes, but I want to make sure that industry partners at this event understand that, yes, I can say this now because I got a lot of gray in my beard and I'm getting close to retirement. It's in the windshield. I can see it's out there. But I've got a 25-year-old and a 21-year-old who I've watched them go through the K-12 system. And my son was lucky enough to have a trades program at his high school and he loved it. And the truth is though, I think even with my own generational gap with my own kids, who I know really well, and the gap I have with my own community college students, if you think a 60-year-old industry expert is going to be able to go in and actively engage with a bunch of 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, and that's going to be the sexy program where the kids want to sign up for, I think we ought to really ask ourselves to evaluate industry partners considering doing things like summer internships for high school teachers who are already there, already have a connection, and can maybe come learn about your industry to make it so that they can make a pertinent, applicable, curriculum change in a program, or help the districts spawn a new program altogether. You have those. Not to say that retirees are not a good option. I think they're a better option for community colleges, for our adjunct. But I just wanted to put it out there. I'm speaking out of my own, I'm a pretty hip dude, but I don't speak the same language as my kids do. You know what I mean? Like, I do, and they're my kids, so we kind of get it, but I'm just telling you, I think taking somebody who's even 5 years older than me and clipping them into the kids 5 years younger than my kids, I think the foresight would be actively pursue things like professional development opportunities for our current teachers, and maybe even make accommodations for people who might be considering a teaching job. Don't make them wait till they're 62 and retired. Maybe offer them some kind of a mechanism in their later years where they may be sort of both, so they're not dependent or they're not impacted by a pay cut right before retirement. I want you to think about this. I think it's important. Good news for you is I have to be back at noon, so I signed up for 10 minutes. If I missed anything, I'm happy to answer questions. I want to take advantage of the platform to just explain how the mechanisms work at community colleges. I appreciate that I've been able to be part of one that's been responsive. Richard Gentry is my counterpart at Sac City. I'll tell you a quick cool story. I was at McCarthy, a big general contractor. We were out on a tour at the Roseville Kaiser, and they had a bunch of their staff come out, and their plumbing, mechanical leader came out, started telling me about how good the program was at Sac City. That's important. Like that, our programs need to be able to work with partners, those ones that are strong enough to survive a couple of years. They get a reputation. They can start pivoting and producing quality students who go out and then. But I think it's neat that we have programs that could be as little as 6 months, like a trade readiness thing. I would say like a third of my students come and find out, oh, this is definitely not for me. You know, honestly, I was telling last night, the guys are talking about 100% placement out of the Sac State program. Damn, I wish I had that. But that's not really what my program's for. My program's to introduce the culture of the industry to people who might be trying it for the first time. And guess what? It isn't free. So I don't know, Richard, I don't know if you had anything you might want to add. I told you I might put you on the spot.
No.
Okay.
You listed it all.
Okay. Anybody have any quick questions that I might be able to try to lay down I can't believe you said that out loud card?
Richard, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Really, the biggest thing I can say is thank you for the involvement. Thank you for your time. We can't do our part without yours. All the way to the K-12, to the industry, we're so dependent upon each other. And I'll say back to that same thing, as you were talking about teachers, retirees are great, right? A lot of knowledge, but to the K-12 piece, he's right. We're too old, right? We are too old. We need to figure out how to get your younger employees, right? A partnership somehow where they're going in and they're seeing those young students and explaining why that path is viable, not after we've already retired.
If there's any questions that come in, we'll make sure that they get to you. That works? Okay, yeah. And just because we're at time, I don't want to keep anybody too long. I want to make sure that you fill out this post-event survey. If you don't have time to do it right now, you will be getting an email from us with a link, and we'll be asking you to fill out the survey. The survey really helps us understand what we can do better, what you guys are appreciating, what you'd like to know more about, and how we can improve and continue to do these events to the best of our abilities. Is there another one on upcoming events? There we go. And then we also have another advisory coming up, an Ag Tech advisory on April 26th. This is virtual only, and with that, any more comments? Thank you for coming. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email any of the people you see up on that screen. That's Alina, myself, and then Kathy Say who you might have heard throughout the program, but helped coordinate and put this together. So thank you, Kathy. And thank you.
We're with the experience here at and let's connect and learn.
Yeah.